I've fallen in love. 1 in 3, but I'm pretty sure she's the one. Oh, 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 oh. 17 and I think I've left here too soon. 1 in 3, but I'm pretty sure I've been rude. Oh, oh, oh. Break the tide. I never opened up my eyes. I never cried until last night. I never paid to watch a lie. I never watched the flower bloom. I never saw a crimson moon. I never smoked out of a spoon. I never drowned in her perfume. But I wanna marry her.
everybody wants to
Because
stay.
everyone wants, and maybe wants to stay. That's the problem that we ran into you too. Otherwise, the original plan was to put you, to have you on it, Matt, and Harsha in the quad.
And then you guys start.
And Barry had, but then it switched to Barry and I in the quad, and you guys had.
But we
then
can't
we found out
because we don't have it.
exactly.
I mean, I'd be convinced to go.
If he crashes, take a picture. Wait, you have the test.
It's really easy.
I took it.
All seriously.
I took it. Not bad. First class. There's no one.
1, 2,
They give you 60 minutes. For the, like, before that we would do. Okay, the quests are meant to be like just review, right?
No. Good trouble.
I heard you looking like flashing, but you're dark.
Oh my god, I forgot this was a thing.
Was it hard?
Huh? Nothing.
I'm on this today. This today though.
I heard live stream.
What?
I heard live stream.
I'm live streaming. I live stream Amstud Class every time I have it. You wanna?
Live stream. Give it to me.
Wait, what?
You look like a beetle.
You look dead. I don't know.
What were you about to say?
I was going to say you look dead, but I don't. It just happened. It just. I didn't mean for it.
Do you have any homework for this class?
I hope not. I wasn't here. Leave me alone. How am I supposed to know?
You were here on the day that we didn't have it?
I was here on. I was not here on Tuesday.
Yeah, we didn't have Amstud Tuesday, so you should remember this.
Leave me alone. I don't know things. That's why I go here. If I knew things, I wouldn't be going to school.
Fight.
I'm going to jump off of the fridge.
You do that, kiddo. Yum yum. Insert Eden clapping.
I hate you.
Me too. Tag yourself, that's me.
They wanted us. I'm not
Here.
Joshua, Sierra, Jacqueline,
Here.
Eden, October, Amy, Jessica, Thomas, Catherine, Eden,
Here.
Diane, Tommy, Jessica,
Here.
Lucian, Sohail, Alexander, Derek, Colin, Sybil,
Colin Jones.
Anne, Amanda,
Here.
Eunice. Do I understand, like, nobody takes attendance in the other classes? It's kind of like, is that
Wow, you know me so well.
it takes like 3 times as long to do it when you have to upload for everyone, unless you have assigned seats, and I bet none of the other classes.
I just watched fantasy. Can I please?
It's self-aside.
I have your quizzes. Actually, I had them already, and
I got a good grade on this, I think.
somehow missed you. Anyway, I'm going to give them back. I will note that some of you, like for
When did
instance,
you become my
see
Asian
no
mom?
writing on it at all. It turns out this is actually a good thing. What happened was normally I do a little more writing, but it was the very first quiz, and I wanted to make sure that I was looking for the right things. And generally, and I wanted to do it well. So anyway, normally I would write a little bit more, but what I ended up doing is reading a bunch of them first before I actually started the grading. And I did that for both sections. So rather than go back and write on them, which I probably should have done, but because I have, kind of insist student habit in not wanting to go back and do it, I just left them the way they are. So if you have no writing, it's actually good. Sorry. So if you, when I call your name, if you, Lucian.
Okay, until this year is What is this? This isn't chip.
No, there are no redos.
Asking
but
too much for me now.
Remember,
Oh my God, I wrote like 2 sentences. Jesus Christ.
I tried to write as much as I could because the more you write, the more chance of something in there will be right.
I'm wondering if I actually got a 65 and he just read it as a 95 and put it in as a
And
95.
then, but tomorrow I'm going to talk about the first essay, which is coming out.
No.
The first essay.
Can I jump off of a
There are a couple more.
bridge? Bridge.
The quiz will be before the 8th. Yes. Amanda,
My notes for Luke directing.
the quiz will be before the 8th. The paper is Eden M.
Hey, look, that's me.
So now,
It's a Mario.
my wife from Barcelona.
Oh, yes, yes.
There is only one team, like, in the world. Right? Everyone else. Derek?
Why isn't it working?
What are you trying to do?
It'll make a buzzing noise between my fingers if I do it correctly.
Why are you the way that you are?
What in the world does that say?
That's what that's what the doctor said to me right after I was
No,
born.
it says last name Schlegel.
I told you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm gonna die.
Amy. Eden.
Almost gets up.
Tommy.
I'm going to die.
Tommy.
You heckin'
Sybil.
Leave me alone, it's beautiful.
Jacqueline.
I'm literally writing an English essay about art.
Jessica.
Technically, I'm not supposed to.
Catherine. Thomas.
Oh, against
Josh.
Much nice,
And Sierra.
as Borat would say. Can I talk about Kazakhstan?
I'm Lorax and I speak for the trees.
Let's talk about Kazakhstan and Borat.
Lorax.
Oh, I didn't give you the big final conclusion of what happened
no.
the other day.
Apparently not.
Wait, what happened the other day?
I fucking murdered bitch.
A murder?
I don't even know what I had for breakfast.
In Chicago?
Who killed who?
Was it William Hirons? Is he back from the dead? No, wait, I don't think he died. I'm going to jump off of a bridge. You're not doing it right.
Yum yum, look at these live stream notes.
Haha.
And then I have 5 pages of typed up notes.
I found Vincent's YouTube channel.
Yeah, he showed it to me.
Casual Vince.
Don't rub it in his face, because he's gonna get pissy about it.
I know.
We have these people who are unhappy because
They go to
they have
Amstud.
this problem with the indigenous people.
Oh, yes.
Now, some of it is caused, by their own, bad disposition. But in any case, they have this problem. They're complaining about taxation, which is falling hard on people who can't come up with taxes because the price of tobacco has dropped. Tobacco. They also don't like the this monopoly that exists, and they don't like what's essentially an oligarchy of people who are very close, and they're kind of running the show. Rule by the few. So we have our aristocrats and the wealthy people who are running Virginia, and they're very closed. It's not very democratic, and they're not letting anyone else in. We'll call it an oligarchy. I mean, it is an oligarchy. And so there's a resentment on a number of levels. But one of the things we saw with this rebellion is that the servants and slaves are basically the same social class. And it had been the case through most of the 17th century because their conditions are pretty much the same in many respects. The outcome of the rebellion is, you might remember I said that Berkeley executes a number of people. We even looked at some of the names of some of the people. Berkeley executes them. But right after, but he's doing it, so what happens is, the king, in the course of the winter of 1676, Berkeley sends off a letter to the king. And the king responds, and again, these conversations, they take 12 weeks to occur. And that's at the speediest, right? And that's without inclement weather or something like that. It's 12 weeks is fast. The king dispatches a commission carrying pardons for all the rebels. So clearly the king's thinking, I'm going to pardon everyone. The commission shows up. Berkeley actually goes against the wishes of the commission, executes 23 people. He would have executed 23. He probably would have executed more people, except on the next ship in, the king has sent his replacement.
Why did he pardon
He, I can guess. Okay, normally when something like this happens, the king doesn't want to be seen as terrifying the people, especially if the king thinks that the governor in question might actually be responsible. And so he sees being merciful on his subjects as the best course forward. Clearly the king thinks that Berkeley did something wrong because he replaces him with the next ship that comes in after the commission shows up. So that actually, it ends up being quite merciful on some of the other people who are awaiting execution. But the other thing that happens is there are a series of laws that are going to follow that, among other things, are going to actually define racial slavery now. And they're going to make it very clear that slavery and race are intertwined. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to have special laws for the slaves. They're not permitted weapons. Resistance by escaped slaves now becomes grounds for execution. That wasn't the case for servants. And it hadn't been the case for slaves up until this point. Slaves are now denied the right to serve as witnesses in court. The white servants, on the other hand, are now permitted property after their service, no matter what. There can be no reason to deny them the property that they're supposed to get from their contracts. And white servants are now also permitted to complain to county justices about unfair treatment, which they also couldn't do before. Remember, poor Mr. Freethorn and Mr. Hellyer, right? Freethorn is at his wit's end. Hellyer becomes a murderer. And this changes that. Now they can actually go to the county justice and complain that they have these problems. What this has done is it's actually created a divide between black and white. The consequence here is that you're not going to have any more black and white armies together rebelling, because the poorest white is now going to be a class above the lowly black slave. So there's a redefinition going on. It is clearly intentional. And I would argue that it really shapes race relations for the next 3 centuries. Hopefully not the next 4.
Why do you think they started dividing the race? like denying the service versus the slaves.
Well, what I'm saying is Bacon's rebellion was a black and white multicultural rebellion. This clearly shook the power structure, and they didn't want to have another situation where black and white together are both rebelling. The easiest way to do that, give rights to the white servants and make sure that the black slaves are now diminished. Now, how much of it is really thinking in terms of social class? I don't know, but clearly there's a racialist thinking in what the Virginia oligarchs are doing in terms of making the laws here. I mean, there's a definite racial component to the redefinition of social classes.
Wasn't that Bacon's rebellion showed that a black and white army is like very powerful, and like that's why they separated?
They burned Jamestown to the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, they're clearly a threat, right? And if Bacon hadn't died, because he was actually somebody who was trained, he actually, if he hadn't died in the course of the winter, perhaps the rebellion would have continued. That he offered the leadership that they needed. We can't really know that. But we do know that they did feel threatened by these events. Eventually, the king will actually come down on Virginia, and it may seem strange, but the monarchy itself will actually say, you know what, this oligarchy in Virginia needs to come to an end. More people need to be able to have some say in what's going on, which might seem odd, but in fact, that is going to happen over time. I don't remember the exact years, but that does develop, in addition to this kind of racialist separation of the ruling classes. So Berkeley and his inner circle. And then Bacon, remember, originally is part of that inner circle. He's expecting to have a bigger role, only to find himself kind of pushed to the margins, and he's resentful of this.
The king replaced Berkeley, so did they continue the oligarchy, or did they end it?
Yeah, so the initial response is not to mess with things. The problem was Berkeley. So Berkeley's replaced, but everything else remains the same. What is going to happen over time, as I said, is the oligarchy itself will be slowly broken up. Virginia will start to seem a little more democratic, and over the course of the next century in particular. Because this is 1676. By 1776, 100 years later, George Washington is from there. Thomas Jefferson is from there. Jefferson is going to have very clear and radical ideas about democratic institutions, and some of that will come from his experience in Virginia. Yeah.
What happened to Berkeley after he was
Well, the only thing I know is he goes back to he had some kind of title, and his family was well connected, so he just went back to whatever he was doing. I don't know much more about the kind of postscript to his career as a colonial administrator, but he goes back and everything is fine.
Did he go willingly?
Well, he doesn't have a choice. I mean, if he were to actually try to stay on, then he's doing what Bacon had done. And so, it's not really an option. If the king tells you that you're recalled, yeah, you're recalled. So as far as I know, there's no resistance. He's just like, all right, fine. He's not happy about it, but he goes. Yeah, so he doesn't put up a resistance. Now here's my next task for you. If you go into Moodle, there's a document that says Massachusetts Charter of Liberties. I would like you to read that over, and here's my question for you. If Virginia had adopted the Massachusetts Charter of Liberties, do you think Bacon's rebellion would have happened? It's I believe it's a PDF document. It's probably under last week, though. I don't think. No, it's not a PDF. It's a Word file. Massachusetts Body of Liberties from 1641. So when you open that, my question, when you read that, my question is, do you think if Virginia had had that same charter, that Bacon's Rebellion would have happened? Who needs more time? Oh, what? Yes, it's true. It's my mom's birthday.
Is your birthday? Is your birthday?
What do you think?
I mean,
That is like the worst abuse of a syllogism I've ever heard. Syllogism. A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C.
that's called a rhetorical fallacy. We learned about that.
We did learn about that.
Unfortunately.
Hey,
Now we can be smartasses to everybody next time.
I feel like that's Kiblerchik's entire mission in life. To make people pretentious assholes.
I think he was successful. I was expecting it to take some kind of turn. She's always with us in our hearts.
Here, FaceTime.
You can't suggest it and then say that no. I think there was something in this document about that, probably.
Yeah,
lying.
there was about like, where was it? Where was it? No, because I saw it.
Not for long.
Yes, if any manner would be a witch.
Wait, what? Nothing.
Here's the thing about Puritans. They were very engaged in their government. They were very they had strong moral ideas about how people were supposed to behave. They also believed in witches.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that. Virginians would have believed in witches too. I mean, it was common throughout this period. When? Okay, John. We'll just leave it there. What's that?
My roommate's mother gave birth to a witch.
We're at a Math and Science Academy. We're not going to go there.
We're at a Math and Science Academy in social class. Excuse
But the whole platform thing?
With that, you don't belong.
So, yes, these are the people who gave us the Salem witch trials. In fact, we could argue, a number of people argued that actually that was so extreme. And it also came as the scientific revolution was about to, really grip the 18th century, that the Salem witch trials are really what brings an end to this kind of period in which people were so extreme in their ideas in that respect. But I had a friend many years ago. She actually grew up in Salem, Massachusetts, and to this day, the people of Salem, Massachusetts, still have this weird, apologetic feeling about the whole episode. Even if they can't trace back their ancestry that far.
It's the witches using spells to make them feel guilty forever.
Shut up.
I can see that even when I'm not wandering into a minefield, there are the enterprising students who are laying down the mines. Let's move away from the witches.
That's the fun thing.
Witches. No. W-H-I-C.
Witchmen.
Is.
Sand witch.
Which happens to be that this particular document has more rights and liberties laid down in it than any other single document, right? Up until the Bill of Rights is actually put together, right? Everything that you're looking for, this is like the big precursor. But back to my question, if Virginia had this document, do you suppose they would have had a problem with it?
Well, I don't think so, because there's they gave one part of the people. But the problem with Virginia was only the governor in this power. Everyone's I think that's the power by themselves. They don't say the taxation.
But what would you give it as an example from the document?
This one, they said that it says something about how when people are hold on, come back to me 2 minutes.
Okay.
All these other things that if any servants of police and Syrian they're allowed to do that.
Okay, so there's this kind of amnesty for servants who run away from abusive masters, and that's what about me?
It talks about no monopolies being granted.
And they have this position about monopolies, which comes from that kind of Puritan belief that that shouldn't be permissible.
They also said that everyone
Yes, and did any of you catch there's also an animal cruelty?
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, oh, cool. It was like, and then it was like, witch.
I was confused about this one thing. It said, if any servants shall flee from tyranny and cruelty of their masters to the house of any freeman of the same town, then they shall be protected. So this is only talking about the servants and not the
Does it
My
give you
pretentiousness
any
used to be
indication
hidden.
that the slaves are enjoying some rights here, or what do you think?
There seems to be very little mention of slaves, so were there?
There's one thing that says every man or woman is free or not free, so how do we read that?
Okay, so free or not free. Yes. So I'm going to introduce this concept, which I'm going to use a number of times in the coming weeks. So this comes from a guy named David Bryan Davis. He's the one who coined these phrases. Massachusetts was a society with slaves. Okay? There weren't that many, but actually going to the Salem witch trial, there was a slave at the center of that. And you remember the story, Tituba the slave is at the center of the controversy. If you ever want to read, not that you necessarily would, but if you really wanted to read an absolutely fascinating history where an enterprising historian used limited amounts of sources to create an incredible piece of literature, nonfiction, is a biography of Tituba, the slave. It was one of the most interesting books I've ever read because what do we know about her is not very much. She pieces together this woman's history. Massachusetts is a society with slaves. This is distinct from Virginia, which is a slave society. Okay? And what happens when you're a slave society, where the whole society is really defined by this condition, and the whole economy depends on it, is that you're going to be much more likely to resist any kind of changes. Whereas in Massachusetts, Rhode Island has more slaves than any of the other states. And it's the first one to actually say, you know what, we're getting rid of them completely. One of the reasons is because Rhode Island happens to be a place where the slaves are there because they're selling them, not because they're actually in servitude. But they have the largest number. We're not
So the dividing between the north and the south started from then?
So It's gradual. So we saw in the case of when we're looking at remember the documents we looked at a few days ago, okay, for Virginia. What we're seeing is as the cost of servants, even though it's coming down, as the cost of slaves also comes down slightly, and people are living longer, it makes more sense for people to buy a slave over knowing they're going to have them for their life, than to invest in indentured servants, right? So there's this economic component to the slave trade, which there's nobody who's like keeping tabs, who's doing like statistical data and saying, the market for slaves is, shifting. But by people's observations, they're recognizing that people are living longer now, and it makes more sense to invest in slaves. So they're starting to do that more and more. And that's in Virginia. In Massachusetts, which by virtue of the fact that it was always more of a commercial enterprise and those differences between the two colonies that I pointed out, slaves never really are emerging there, in part because everyone there is trying to be some kind of farmer or merchant. They're not raising cotton, it's the wrong climate. They're not raising tobacco, it's the wrong climate. So Massachusetts is a different place geographically and demographically, and Virginia is a place where they're relying on very labor-intensive crops in order to make their money. And so they end up turning to slavery in order to realize this. Did they have to? No, they probably could have done something else, but that's the direction that they go. And as a result, a slave society as opposed to a society with slaves. There are these kinds of, eventually it's going to be very clear when you go from a society with slaves to a slave society. You cross over the state line and you know exactly that you've entered this new place. So in Philadelphia, have any of you been to Philadelphia? Delaware is right next door. Delaware is a slave state. You can drive from Philadelphia to Delaware in about 15 minutes, now. Which means it wasn't that far. I mean, on a horse, I imagine it's like a day's ride, less than a day, to get from Philadelphia to Delaware. Philadelphia, early on, would have been a place where it was a society with slaves. You see some slaves. But you don't have to go very far to go to Delaware, and you're in a slave society, and it's very clear. Right, so the line starts to develop gradually over time. By the time we're in the 18th century, it's very obvious where you are. Other comments about this?
In the animal cruelty one, is that protecting like the livestock as well, or is that just like pets? So you're thinking like certain animals are slaughtered?
Yeah. So like say like someone might stole your cow and like meat or something.
No, I don't think it applies there. I really do think when we're talking about animal cruelty, we're talking about animals that are pets. Like although the thing is, now here would be the big question, and I know there's a body of literature that deals with this, and I haven't really read that, so I can't tell you. But the question would be, it was not that uncommon back then for people to like consider all kinds of animals pets. You know, they would have their sheep. We're kind of in this region between pet and livestock. So I'm sure they had an understanding for how this was applied, and I don't know where that line is.
Well, unfortunately, that which is what's going to mean by familiar spirit. So, that half what we both with familiar spirit.
You don't know what a familiar spirit is?
So, like, I mean,
every witch is supposed to have some kind of like, a cat or an owl or something like around.
Oh, I thought it was called familiars.
Yeah, Harry Potter's the white owl.
So you have an owl, you're a witch?
Yeah, what kind of freak is an owl?
If this spirit is something that you're actually consulting, clearly you're honest. And here's the other part. Okay, I told this in the morning class. I don't want to derail us, but since you love witches so much. Up until the Salem witch trial, okay, the people who were punished as witches, it was very gender specific. Do you want to guess which gender that was? Up until the Salem witch trial, no male had ever actually been pulled into some kind of like witchcraft incident.
Did these women have like mental disorders, or was it just people that like the devil?
So I had, there's a Becky Tannenbaum was an adjunct professor at one time when I first started as a graduate student. Her expertise was on witches, and what she from her research, what she told us was that generally what we're talking about, the best she could piece it together, was any kind of suspect behavior on the part of women that was non-conformist in any way. So they might, some of them might have been actually mentally ill, right? But just deviation from what was considered proper gender norms was enough to end up being labeled as a witch, which was a sure way to get yourself in really deep trouble. And so that there is that whole sort of gender side to the witch episodes in that history, which is interesting, but that's something I think we'll get into. I love you guys. You really make it hard for me to get this. Yes.
Like, was there like a jail system for you? Like, anything to be
Yeah, remember I told you the Puritans are kind of, they're kind of limits. Like, so long as you're a good Puritan, everything is fine.
Good.
If you're not,
Good.
There are some problems. And what's obviously happening here, if you remember from the Magna Carta and other documents that were earlier, there is a lot of concern about due process and those kinds of rights. And so what happens here in this Massachusetts Body of Liberties is that there are obvious concerns about where that should go when it comes to these big issues that the Puritans grapple with, because of course, they may have given us progressive taxation and democracy, but they're kind of intolerant of certain things. And so that's kind of speaks to that tradition about due process kind of showing up in the document that reflects the kind of punitive concerns of Puritan thinking.
So, in a society with slaves, does the slave market have a major effect on the economy, or is it just like...
Not really. Well, the exception might be a place like Rhode Island, where it's actually a depot for the trade, and so there's a lot going on, but the economy itself doesn't have a lot of them, so it's all in the trade. If you look at my document when I was talking about how they don't tax, one of the things that the Virginians are doing, because they have the flat taxes, is they're lying about their transactions with the slaves. So you basically have somebody they're like, okay, I'm going to buy a slave at 25 pounds, but they'll record it on the official document as 15 pounds. That way they don't have to pay. They're paying less, right, for the transaction fee. And so there's a lot of this kind of in Virginia you have a lot of. I'm assuming in Rhode Island you have the same kind of thing, and therefore the actual amount of money that's collected in the form of taxes on transactions for slaves is much less, simply because people have been lying about it. And so Rhode Island, they simply make a moral stand later on and say, we can get rid of it, and we have other economic things that are more important to us.
In the document it says that it is the liberty of freedmen to choose deputies for the general court. Is that voting, or would that just be?
Read one more time.
It is the liberty of the freedmen to choose such deputies for the general court out of themselves, either in their own towns or elsewhere in the territories.
Yeah, no, so anyone who has the freeman title can vote for the position deputy, which is on that.
So it's like a freeman title, is that like something that you have to...
No, freeman just means that you own property.
Or does it just mean that you own property?
It just means you own property.
Oh.
The property issues will come up again during the revolution. We'll look at that next week.
When it says it has like the liberties of servants line, and it says like if they flee the house, they shall be protected and sustained till due order be taken for their real life, provided due notice therefore be speedily given to their masters from whom they fled. So
What number is that one?
It's 85.
85. Can I like finish the class?
Oh.
And then I will answer your question about number 85 like tomorrow or something. Just let me get to my last point. Is that okay, October? Just let me give you the last concept, okay, for today. Well, I will come back to the. I'll have to start calling you troll. You do realize.
No, stop.
So, you remember from your earlier history classes, navigation acts are something that prompts the revolution, right? You probably heard this. But you probably, the one thing that I found is that you don't actually know what that means. Like, oh, they're rebelling against navigation. On page 112 in your book, it's a very short document. I'm not going to have you read it now because we're not going to have time. I want to make my point that if you could read 112, well, it's 113 in the top of 114. It's one page of reading. If you can do that for tomorrow, it will expedite this discussion. Okay? I need to tell you what this is. Because the navigation acts are tied up in it, as is the context for this document by this time, Mr. Mayor. Any of you know what this is? Every couple of years or so, I get a student who can give me a totally right-on definition.
No.
No.
I don't know what it is.
I learned about it and forgot. Wait, isn't it like with this like
Hurry up, someone else is getting.
never mind.
It has several components.
Wait, I don't know if this is right, but is it like where people sell it for like more than that?
That's just capitalism. Mercantilism. Yeah, it's eBay. There you go. So this is early eBay. No, this is so. We have several components. The first one is the assumption that the only thing that gives currency its value is the fact that it has some kind of like precious metal in it. Okay. So paper money. There are lots of attempts to introduce paper money. All of these schemes historically have not turned out well. They end up issuing too much of it, the economy collapses, and money becomes worthless. You might as well just burn it to fire. So coins are considered the actual valuable thing because they have gold or silver in them. And their value will come from the fact that people value the gold and silver. Okay? Now, the gold and silver itself, themselves come from under the ground. So mercantilism begins from one assumption, which is quite correct, which is that the world's resources are finite. That includes how much silver and gold there is. There's only so much. But they go from there and they say, but because it's finite, we need to make sure that we get it before our competitors do. In the competitors' case, which are about other monarchies. Okay. And the reason you need to get it is because the only reason anything is worth anything, including like money, is because you actually have this. Okay, so they take it the next step, and they decide that means when you have your colonies, you need to make sure that they're only trading with the mother country. The colonies, the British colonies, have to trade. Everything has to go to London first. Why? Because you don't want the French and the Spanish to get any goods that they may have. Again, this is mercantilist thinking. It comes from the very same place that the resources are finite, that gold and silver need to be in the money, and therefore the trade needs to go to the central place. So they're going to come up with navigation acts which are going to enforce this, okay, to assure that that's how things function. Now, in order to thwart the efforts of your competitors, the other powers are going to, what's the difference between privateer and pirate? So you don't necessarily know mercantilism, but you know this. Well, actually, turns out they both do.
Privateers are pirates that are like outside the government.
Okay, so here's the thing about the Navigation Acts and mercantilism. These guys fly under their own flag. They're raiding whoever they feel like. And normally we're talking about people who, like, they mutinied because they were forced into the service in the first place. The captain was very cruel, and they're together with slaves, and they decided, freedom in the Caribbean is better than, serving his or her majesty on a ship. That's very oppressive. These guys are basically pirates, but they're carrying something called letters of marque. That's M-A-R-Q-U-E. And the letters give them permission to raid the ships of the competitors. So, if you are a British privateer, your letter of marque gives you permission to be a pirate and raid the ships of the Spanish and the French and whoever else you may come across. That way, you can steal their gold and silver.
But what's the difference between being given permission and just like going on and stealing it? Like, aren't they gonna
You get caught by English.
The difference is if you're one of these people, you're everyone's enemy, and they can kill you. If you're one of these people, you have the crown's power behind you. Actually, some of these people begin as these people. Yeah. Usually there's some kind of falling out, there's some kind of issue, but a number of the famous pirates, like Captain Kidd, for example. Captain Kidd actually was a privateer who actually becomes a pirate later on. I mean, these are all real. Blackbeard, also real guy, starts as a privateer, becomes a pirate. Jack Sparrow is not. He is fictional.
So what, how do other governments not perceive these privateers as like an act of war?
Well, they all have them.
Okay, so it's just kind of like a.
So if you're French, you're not called a privateer. If you're a French privateer, you're actually called a corsair, which is the French version of a privateer. And having a letter of marque makes more sense because this is actually in French.
So they're like basically espionage.
Well, they're not to a point, but they're not. It's more like you're a demolition team because you're not really spying. You're stealing intentionally. You're trying to take everyone else's stuff. You're not trying to spy and like, oh, we sighted the ship. No, we sighted the ship and then we took the ship and everything on it.
So we're all three countries that open war then?
They're all doing it all the time. In fact, the thing is, I told you the British are kind of behind the other colonial powers. The British entered the Atlantic world as pirates. They're doing much more of this than they are extracting resources of any kind. In fact, even before they get permanent colonies, they're spending most of their time raiding Spanish and French ships in the Atlantic. That's how the British Empire is, entering the Atlantic trade.
Did anyone have like weird goals that I think people can
That's a very interesting question. I don't know.
So what is
So the part of the thinking of mercantilism is that the colonies can only trade with the mother country. And that comes from the thinking that the resources, that is the gold and silver, are finite, and therefore you need to make sure that you get it before the competitors do. And the problem the British have, because they don't actually get anything with gold and silver, is that their best hope is to actually work as privateers and raid everyone else's ships. And yes, as you point out, it is essentially an act of war, but it's an ongoing war that's going on all the time. And as I will point out to you tomorrow, in fact, the number of actual wars is so frequent that it almost doesn't even matter. There's almost no peacetime. They're constantly at each other's throats. And it's one of the things the colonists are going to come to resent, and they will actually point it out. Pay attention, though, when you read this document for tomorrow. It's one page. Pay attention to what's the context for it is right here. So if you understand this, you'll see what this guy is bemoaning. This guy Randolph is making these observations about what's going on in colonial trade. Okay. Is there another question? No. Okay. I find out about your number 85. Let's see if I can offer you some.
You've never seen these sites before.
So we'll have time also.
I'm so sorry. Thanks. Jacqueline, you need to come look at this. Just do it.
When did I?
Last night.
Is that his first name? Yes, that's his name.
Actually, no, I
And look, they're both redheads. And they're both around the same age.
They both have glasses.
They're both around the same age. They both have parents.
We don't have gym today, right?
Yes!
Yes, as in we don't have gym.
We don't have gym.
I had an alarm go off.
I have a theory that he might be Batman.
Set up
Batman?
turn into what? That's it. I'm working on math.
I think you need to have a theory that there's Batman first. Huh?
I know when dude's father's birthday is.
I need to, when his mother's birthday is? I tried already, I couldn't find it. Huh?
We have no idea.
What the heck? This is weird.
Yeah.
You know what else was?
February 14th, 2005.
Oh, whoops, I still have the live stream going.
Ni hao.